This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning. My name is Marjorie Bostic, and I'm a health planning specialist. And we are here from the Licensure Division of the Oklahoma State Department of Health. We are here to provide you with an overview of long term care facilities we license for the state of Oklahoma, such as nursing homes, assisted living and continuum of care facilities, residential care homes, and adult daycares. Oklahoma is also a certificate of need stage, which we will also cover. Our director, Espanola Bowen, um, wasn't able to be here today. However, we have Leah Whitney McEwen, who is a new health planning specialist, who will be observing today. We also have Michael Todd, who will be going over certificate of need. Agnes Opara will cover assisted living and continuum of care. Tyler Williams will address residential care and adult daycare. And we also have Naomi Scott, who oversees the administrative part of our division, and she really holds everything in place for us, as you can already see. I will start off with nursing homes, and everyone else will introduce themselves and provide an overview of the types of facilities we license. As previously mentioned, my name is Marjorie Bostic, and I have an educational background in community and public health, and I've served as a health planning specialist for close to 18 years. In addition, I've worked in various positions, including the county health department since about 1988. Nursing home licenses are covered under the Nursing Home Care Act and the Long Term Care Security Act, Title 63 of the Oklahoma Statute, Section 1 1901 and Section 1 1944. The rules followed are under the Oklahoma Administrative Code, which include Title 310 for the Oklahoma State Department of Health, Chapter 675 of Nursing and Specialized Facilities. As previously mentioned, Oklahoma is a certificate of need state. If you're wanting to own, operate, or manage a nursing home or a continuum of care with nursing home beds, you're required to go through the certificate of need process. As mentioned, Michael Todd will cover this section of our presentation. Once you've received an approval for the certificate of need, the facility is required to submit a nursing home initial license application, which is issued for a total of 180 days. During this period of time, the facility is usually surveyed to be sure the new owner operator is in compliance. Before the initial license expires, the facility is required to submit a renewal license application, which is issued for a total of 3 years. If any changes are made other than what was reported to the department on the license application, such as a change in the facility's mailing address, a change in the administrator, um, a change in officers for the company, any types of changes that were not previously reported on the license application are required to be reported by law to the health department, and a notice of change is required to be submitted to the department. We call it ODH Form 958. In going over the license application, some of the things we look for include the fee. There is a $10 per bed per year. So if you have a 100-bed facility, the yearly fee is $1,000 or $3,000 to renew the facility license. Another thing we look for on the application is the signature. The license application requires a signature from the owner, licensee, or operator. If there is an LLC, it is usually a stockholder or a manager for the company. Oftentimes, we receive applications signed by the facility administrator, and if this happens, the application is considered incomplete and the renewal would not be processed until um, it's corrected and we receive an application signed by an authorized person or an owner for the facility. The application also requests the name of the property owner, which we will verify with the county assessor's office. If there is a separate property owner from the licensee, the department likes to have a copy of the lease agreement on file for our record. If there is a separate company managing the operations of the facility, that is something that is also part of the application process that is provided on the application form. We will look to ensure that the management company was reviewed and was approved through a certificate of need exemption. We also check to be sure that the licensee, operator, and management company are properly registered and able to conduct business in the state of Oklahoma with the Secretary of State. The application also is the application is also the applicant is also required to provide us with the staffing projection and the professional certification listing the shift times, the number of staff per shift, the name of the director of nursing, the medical director, the pharmacist, and the registered dietitian. And we also verify the license for those particular individuals. If we are reviewing an initial license application, we look for an executed closing document and our transfer agreements. One of the things that I would like to emphasize is that once you receive your administrator's license and are working within a facility, it is your duty to keep the licensing board up to date as well as the health department. If you are out surveying, if we are out surveying a facility and it is reported that you are the administrator for that facility and there are deficient practices found, that's going to be tied to your license. Don't depend on the owner to notify the health department that there has been a change in administrator. You should complete the notice of change and submit it and notify the health department of your departing date. That's very important. I would also like to say that you guys will be in charge of ensuring that one of our most vulnerable populations are taken care of, and it's important that you make sure that everyone is doing their part. Are there any questions about nursing home applications or renewals? Okay, then. If not, next up we're going to have Mike Todd. Mike, are you ready?
Can y'all hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Certificate of need is basically a pre-approval for an ownership change to acquire a facility. It's also to establish a new nursing home, which we don't get those at all because of the occupancy at nursing homes. But there we have standards that are set out in Chapter 4, and Chapter 4 is all encompassing of chapters 620 and 630 and 635. All have been included into Chapter 4 to make it easier. They're broke up into subsections for acquisitions, for intermediate care facilities for people with intellectual disabilities, and we also have the standard CN also to get new beds. And you can file a certificate of need. Also, you can ask for exemptions. Exemptions include uh, changes to the facility, like if a facility wants to be replaced or split and move, they can move within the radius of 3.5 miles if you're out in the rural part of the state, and if you have a border with the cities of Oklahoma City or Tulsa, you have a 7.5 mile radius that you can transfer your building to. And we have those that have been done here in the cities. So it's 7.5 miles to put in a new facility. And we've had a few that have been done in the counties too, where they've taken two nursing homes and combined them into one large nursing home, and basically just having one facility in a city. So there's those type of things. The main thing for administrators when this happens is you're going to be contacted by the new ownership of the facility of whether you want to contract and stay as the administrator through this process. And they can either bring in their own if you decide not to do that, and they'll put them on the application. But if they reach out to you and you want to keep your job and you accept employment, they'll have you sign a piece of paper saying that you're going to continue working for the facility under the new ownership. And sometimes, if the new ownership doesn't have experience, they'll ask you to be part of a plan for operating the facility, um, as part of the QI team, as part of the overall operations. And then you'll also give us a statement of your hours that you work at the facility. How many hours do you work? And you can say 40 to 60 hours at the facility. So that's the main thing that affects their need. But if you guys are administrators who have an ownership interest, then you'll take more part of the CN as you'll be providing other documents, financial documents, and we'll look back at the history of your operations to see what kind of operator you are. There are a few exclusions that are in the certificate of need. If you've ever lost certification with if you've ever lost a certification with CMS, you're not eligible for a new facility at all for 60 months. If the state Department of Health has closed your facility, you're not able to get a new facility for 60 months, which is 5 years. Then there's other things that we can deny you for 36 months. If your sub-quality care in all of your operations is over 20%, that may lead to denial. It's not a certain thing, but it just may lead to denial. You also may, for if you have a receiver placed at your facility, you could also have a denial, depends on the purpose of the receiver. And then if you have a penalty over $36,000, depending on what the nature of the penalties are, that may also lead to a denial. It's not always a denial. It just may lead to a denial because the rule says may deny. So the department, we look at those rules and we discuss those, and try to have a fit of what goes on to see how far you are away from that penalty, what you did to overcome the penalty, what you've done to make things better. So that kind of goes into it. And then we look at the budget of the facility. We go out to the healthcare authority and grab the financial information that was submitted for the previous years to see if the numbers you're providing us add up to what has been reported for historically for the facility. This is a bunch of review stuff, but like I said, for administrators, the biggest part of your deal is you're going to assist the new ownership in this transition period by saying you're going to contract with them and stay on. If you have any questions, please send me. The person who sent me, has there been any new certificate of needs issued? Not in my time that I've been at the department. I've been at the department for 18 years. And I've been in this area for 11, and I've not seen a new certificate of need. Now, I've seen people break up nursing homes and build new facilities, but never a new certificate of need for a new service. If there's no other questions, I will pass on to the next person.
That'll
Hello,
be Agnes
everyone.
Opara.
Hi, everyone. My name is Agnes Opara, and I will be discussing assisted livings and continuum of cares. Um, I will first start with the assisted living side. Assisted living care facilities um, offer, coordinate, provide services to persons who have functional impairments. They need assistance with personal care or nursing supervision. They may need intermittent or unscheduled nursing care. They may need medication assistance. They may need assistance with transfer and or ambulation. Intermittent nursing care and home health aid services may be provided in an assisted living facility by a home health agency. Um, in regards to licensing, as my coworker Marjorie mentioned before, we do have our applications online, and we ask that they are signed by the applicant, which is usually the owner or someone that the owner operator has identified to be the person, the point person to sign the documents. And when they have identified that person, they usually send us that information so we know going forward that any application signed by that person, they have permission by the operator. um, for an assisted living, the first license application is the establishment license application, and that basically allows the facility to advertise for their facility. So, with that, we are looking at uh, just basically your plan, what you wish to do with the facility, how you wish to advertise, how you wish to present your services. We're looking at the resident agreement contracts. Um, and at that time, we are hoping that you have submitted your plans to our plan review department if you are looking to establish a new facility as an assisted living. Once that has been approved, we are looking for your initial license application. Now, once you've sent in your establishment application, you can also submit your initial license application at the same time or after the establishment has been approved. The initial license application, we are looking for an approval by the plan review department, which is our architectural department. Um, Once we have that approval and everything is complete in the application, then we can proceed with uh, sending you that initial license. If we don't have approval, or if the plan review department has um, some other recommendations, things that you may need to fix, then we will wait on that before we proceed with issuing the license. Um, Also, in the initial license, we are looking for the contracts that you have with service providers, i.e., physicians, nurses, RNs, LPNs. We are looking at who you have staffed as your administrator. Um, we are looking for who you have as a dietitian, pharmacist. There should be contracts submitted to us, and on our form 953E, you will have their names and their license numbers attached to that. We request that because we do look up each of those staff members and check to make sure that their licenses are current, up to date, and they don't have any restrictions on their license. We also look at your fire marshal report, your occupancy, to make sure that there's been an approval, that everything looks fine. Um, if you are going to be having an Alzheimer's unit or memory care, we are looking at the fire marshal report. And sometimes some facilities go outside and they have a separate um, a separate organization that looks at their sprinklers. We want to ensure that in the event of a fire, anyone who is not able to get up on their own or may need assistance is protected at all times. Um, we are also looking at, before any of the operations are made, these forms need to be turned in at least 30 days in advance. We need time to review them. If there are any issues or anything is missing, we will contact you via email and or through letter. The initial license is licensed for 180 days, and that gives time for our um, our long-term care department to go out and review and look into the building, look into the staff, make sure everything that's supposed to be there according to the law is there. Once that is approved, um, you continue on with services. Just ensure that once that 180 days is about to expire, you get in contact with us or go online and get your renewal license application. The initial license will have the expiration date on the license, and you are supposed to have that license posted on or somewhere in the building where everyone can easily see it. I say this because it's so important that you don't wait until after the application, until after the license is expired to send in an application, um, because you will have an issue. State law states you're supposed to be licensed in order to operate a facility, a long term care facility in the state of Oklahoma. So please keep an eye out for those dates and ensure that you send in your renewal license application timely. Um, the renewal licenses, as of November 2021, are now 3-year renewal licenses. So that means it is now $10 per bed times 3 years. So you send in those funds. We are checking those funds to make sure they are correct, and we will let you know if anything is incorrect or we need more money or whichever. And then you will have your license for 3 years. We ask that if there are any changes during those 3 years, as in if the administrator changes, if the ownership changes, anything, let us know, please. Because one reason is our records are open records. So if we get a subpoena, if someone from the public comes in, we will be giving them this information, of course minus some confidential information, but we will be giving them all of this information, and if the contacts and everything are incorrect, that could be a problem. Also for us, because a lot of our correspondence is via email, if somebody leaves and that email for the contact person is no longer available, and we are trying to send you information, say to let you know that your renewal was incomplete or your initial was incomplete, uh, if we can't contact you, you don't get that information, and that could mean a violation on your part, because we sent the information and we weren't able to get in contact with you to get that fixed. Um, so, at this point, are there any questions? Any for in regards to assisted livings? Okay, so I will go on to continuum of care. So, continuum of care is a mix, kind of a fusion of nursing home and assisted living together. So there are some components of it that we will need in regards to the assisted living, and then there's some components of it that we will need in regards to nursing home. So for instance, with an assisted living, when there's a transfer of ownership or a new ownership for just an assisted living, you will submit an initial license. But for a continuum of care, because it has a nursing home component and nursing homes go through certificate of need, when there is a new owner or a need for a transfer of ownership, you will need to go through the certificate of need process. Um, care is still basically the same in regards to the assisted living process. Um, if someone is needing more care and assistance with a continuum of care, there's that nursing home component. Again, if the care of that patient is in far greater need than what the facility can provide, you are to make the necessary changes and alert the health department. Um, with Also with management, if there are any changes or an addition in regards to continuum of cares, um, you will have to submit a certificate of need exemption, because again, since continuum of cares have that nursing home component, they follow a lot of the nursing home rules, a lot of the certificate of need rules. um, so if you have any questions, any issues, any confusion in regards to that or trying to figure that out, you are more than welcome to contact us anytime. We would prefer that you contacted us with questions than to proceed with something and not have the right information, and possibly get a penalty. So that is it for me. Any other questions? All right. I believe the next person is Tyler.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tyler Williams, and I work as an administrative assistant one for health facility systems. I not only do the administrative tasks in accordance with the department, I also review initial and renewal licenses for both adult daycare as well as probationary renewal and modification license applications for residential care facilities. I'll start with adult daycare. Adult daycares are facilities that provide day services to vulnerable populations, such as the elderly and those with intellectual disabilities. They are in a, the Adult Daycare Act is in accordance with Oklahoma Statute 63 1-874, as well as the legislative statute Title 310, Chapter 605. So for adult daycares, at least in the initial phase, I'll go through kind of the checklist of each facility to get my points across. So for a initial license application, it is $75 as and the renewal process, which as Agnes has mentioned to everyone, has been extended to 3 years as of November 1st of 2021. So for an initial, it is $75, but for a 3-year renewal license, it's $225. So it's just $75 a year added up to 3 years. For the initial license, if you're not an incorporated person or you're not an incorporation, an LLC, a 501c3 nonprofit, you will be required to submit ODH Form 301, Affidavit of Lawful Presence, and you're required for the initial and the renewal license. And you're also required to submit ODH Form 712, which needs to be submitted, signed, and notarized by the appropriate entities for both initial and renewal, as well as the ODH Form 953B, which is your disclosure statement for ownership. For the initial and for if anything changes, you are required to submit ownership info, which is 953's C and D, which are more in depth to describe who is a part of the entity and anything from building owners to the board. If it's a nonprofit, you are required to submit ODH Form C and D during the initial process, and then it's not required for the renewal unless you have any changes. If you do have changes in ownership or any of that nature, you are required to submit Forms 953 C and D. And for the initial, you're required to submit staffing projections, ODH Form 953E, which as Marjorie mentioned earlier, depict the staffing ratio as well as who is going to be on staff for that period of time, as well as if you have any staff that are contracted with the facility, such as doctors, pharmacists, nurses, or dietitians, you would put their name and license number on the forms so that we can verify it through the appropriate channels. If you are an LLC, an incorporation, or a nonprofit such as a 501c3, you are required to be active and in compliance with the Secretary of State. We verify that through the Secretary of State website, which shows if you are active and you're in compliance with the tax commission. As well, we require that if you're not active, then we would need for you to be an active entity as well as up to date with your tax laws or with the tax laws in the state of Oklahoma for your business. For the initial license, if you are an individual, in addition to the Form 301, you would need to provide a certificate of fictitious name. I haven't encountered this quite yet during the initial licensing process for an individual looking to open a facility. However, that is something that I'll be continuing to look into. And the next one, and this happens, I feel to be most important for the initial process. Submit your floor plans and approval from plan review. Before I can review your initial license, you need to go through the plan review department, as Agnes has mentioned. You need to go through them to submit your forms and floor plans to them, to the architect, so that they can approve it and then go out to your facility to be evaluated and make sure that it is in accordance with the rule and the law that I just mentioned earlier, the Adult Daycare Act. And if once we get approved, then I can review your license to make sure that you have met all the requirements for an initial license. With the initial, you are required to have a statement from the city or local zoning authority to show that the facility is approved and zoned to be an adult daycare, as well as a complete description of programs and services. And this is something that I've encountered. We would like for a very descriptive description of programs and services, something that's in detail, showing us what you intend to do, what activities you have planned for the recipients in your facility, and what is planned for any of the vulnerable populations that you'll be servicing throughout the day. We also require a projected budget, revenues, and expenses for the first month. So for that first month, we want to see how much money you're going to be spending within the first month of operation, and what your expenses are going to be for the facility at hand. And we also want to make sure that you have approval from the state fire marshal to ensure that your facility is safe for the vulnerable population. We also require that the applicant in question submit their financial statements, such as a budget from within the last year or 12 months. Like the projected budget, we would like to know how much money would be typically spent within the last year for the person who was opening the facility. Of course, we also require that the director and/or administrator be licensed through OSBELCA and be up and current without no penalties on their license. And if you're going to be servicing Alzheimer's patients, we need ODH Form 613, which is the Alzheimer's disclosure form. If you check yes on Form 712, then that form is going to be required, how you're going to be servicing the patients with Alzheimer's disease. And if you're going to be doing any expansions or any changes in your participant count, as well as expanding on the facility, you will need to notify plan review and go through the plan review process again, and notify them of any changes of beds so that they can in turn notify us to let us know that you're looking to expand. Now, for the renewal process, once you get an initial license issued, it will be for 180 days. During that period, the long-term care division will go out with their surveyors to ensure that you're still meeting the needs in accordance with the rule and the law and meeting the needs of your participants. And in turn, you will be required during the renewal process, which will be $225, you will be required to file 45 days before the license expiration, and that is required by law. And as well, you will be, let me think, is there anything else I'm missing? I don't think there's anything else. I think I've covered everything, at least for adult daycare. Does anybody have any questions about adult daycare facilities and the processes that will need to be undertaken? All right. So I will move on to residential care facilities. Now, residential care facilities are a lot more descriptive in what is required for both the probationary process, the renewal process, as well as the modification. There are 3 different tiers for an entity such as a res care. Now, for residential cares, the people that are going to be occupying the facility will need to be ambulatory and can be independent within the facility. Now, for a probationary license to be filed, it will be $50 for the initial process or for the probationary process, $75 for a 3-year license, and if you're going to be making any modifications to the application or to the facility, it will be $20 for a modification application. And for the form, the application is ODH Form 728, which needs to be signed and notarized by all parties. And for residential care facilities, to quote the law, it will be Oklahoma Statute 63 1-822 and Title 310, Chapter 680. If you're an individual, same as adult daycares, you will need to have an affidavit of lawful presence if you're not going to be in a corporation, as well as a 953 B disclosure statement, as well in 953's C and E. Now this is for ownership and staffing projections, as well as ownership information, as well as statement from the city and local zoning authority. And you are also required to have agreements with a physician, a pharmacist, and a registered nurse, and a registered dietitian if you're going to be taking in any residents who have special diets. In the condition that you require special diets, you would need to get a contract a dietitian to be with the facility, and we verify all physicians through the medical board as well as the osteopathic board if they're a DO. A pharmacist and a registered nurse, we look at the Board of Pharmacy as well as the Oklahoma State Board of Nursing and or nurses database if they are licensed in multiple states, and the dietitian board. For the probationary renewal and modification process, you would need the fire marshal inspection to make sure that you are most current and are in a compliance. If you're not in compliance, you would need to submit a modified or another form to make sure that the facility is current, as well as be registered with the Secretary of State. We need to make sure that the administrator is indeed licensed with the facility and up to date, and an electrician and plumber inspection is required annually for the facility, and we also would need the name and the license number for both entities, for the electrician and the plumber, so that we can verify through the Construction Industries Board. For the initial process, we would need a description of the applicant's qualifications, as well as the financial statement and the home's budget for the facility. If you are leasing the home from someone, we need a copy of the lease agreement, and if there's a manager, we need the most current manager on file. And we also need the drawings and the plans of the home, and this would go back to the plan review process. You would need to go through that first with the adult with them, like the adult day cares, before we can preview the probationary license that you're looking to open for the facility, as well as a brief approval occupancy for plan review. And we also want to make sure, and this is for the renewal process, we check long-term cares, the surveys that are brought out by long-term care, they come out every 12 to 15 months, especially after we issue the probationary license. We want to make sure that that you have a cleared survey and you don't have any deficiencies. You are also, for the initial process, required to submit a contract to us that describes the terms of the contract, description of programs and services, the resident's rights, duties, and obligations in the home, the rates and charges in which you will be charging the resident to be in the facility, the amount of the deposit that they will be submitting, as well as sources that are liable for payment, and the name of the resident's representative or the advocate if you have any. The residents, like I said earlier, must be ambulatory, and there needs to be a discharge or termination procedure if need be. Staffing requirements need to be a sufficient number of staff qualifications, and staff training. This goes back to the 953E staffing projections that depict how many staff is going to be in the facility at all times, as well as who's contracted with the facility to work with the residents. And sometimes we'll have facilities that have 3 beds or less. That's usually the smaller facilities. They have certain other requirements, such as we have to verify the county assessor on the real estate owner, as well as a cleared survey and a conditional license. And you would have to, in any changes in plan or any beds, would need to be notified by plan review. I think that's pretty much it. Does anybody have any questions for residential care facilities or to operate them? All right, so I will give the reins over to Naomi Scott for the administrative procedures and processes within our department.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay. As Marjorie and Tyler said, I'm Naomi Scott. I am the administrative assistant to Espa Bowen, the director, and I assist all of the planning specialists that you just recently heard from, and newly added Leah Whitney. Ewan, what my staff and I do is we actually receive the incoming license renewals, initial license, anything that comes from plan review, certificate of need. We log those. We either create a facility number or we establish a certificate of need number and we assign it to the planning specialist. When we receive these renewals, the initials and the certificate of need, um, they're time sensitive, so they have to be logged and processed and forwarded over to a planning specialist for further review. At that time, when we receive an initial license or a license renewal, we will generate an assurance letter acknowledging that our department has received your initial license or license renewal. At that time, we will either email you or we will mail you. It is very imperative that you guys have the correct email address listed on the renewal application or the initial license so that we can assure that it is getting to the appropriate parties. Okay, another thing that we do is we issue assurance letters for notices of changes. When we do that, also we send out an assurance letter, we process it, and the notice of change is changing the administrator or the director of nursing. Okay, I'm gonna go back to the renewal license and the initial license. When we send you guys the letters out, the language that is in the assurance letters, it will read as follows. and this is only an initial license that currently have a facility number, not a new facility number that was recently created. If that is the case, the planning specialist will write you and notify you that they are in receipt of the initial license. But the language that you will receive in the letter, and this goes for the initial and the renewals, is that basically we are in receipt of the renewal or the initial application, except as otherwise prohibited by law. Of licensee has made timely renewal and sufficient application for the renewal of a license or a new license with reference to any transfer or any activity of continuing nature. The existing license does not expire until the application has been finally determined by the agency. And what that language means is if you submit a timely license renewal and your license renewal have not been processed yet, this will serve as only a temporary license until a new license is issued. You are to hang this letter up in place of the expired license until you receive the new one, and you will replace that letter with the new license. If you're submitting an initial license and you have never operated a facility before, and this is a brand new facility, this is not a license to operate your facility until you have gone through the proper steps. It is very imperative that you guys are aware that all applications are processed in order in which received. If you receive a reminder postcard in the mail reminding you that your licensed facility is set to expire, the license is set to expire within 60 to 90 days, it is your responsibility as the administrator or the owner to submit that license renewal in a timely fashion. If not, your application will be forwarded to the planning specialist and they will continue to process again in the order in which they were received. Too many times we receive license renewals, and I'll use an example as we'll receive a license renewal on Monday and we'll receive a phone call on Friday asking where the license is. The turnaround time, I will say, is pretty quick, but sometimes you have to keep in mind that there's still missing information. The planning specialist will email you, call you, or send a correspondence via U.S. mail. You have to allow them some time to review the entire application before calling. Again, you will receive an assurance letter in the mail stating that we have received it, just to allow them some time to review all the documents. All the administrators, if you're an administrator of a record for a said facility, it is your responsibility, and I believe Agnes had said this, it is your responsibility to notify us if you are no longer going to be the administrator of record at that facility. You can't rely on anyone else but yourself to give us a call, email, and say, hey, look, I am no longer the administrator of record for this facility. Please remove my license. If you fail to do so within a timely manner, if anything happens to that facility and they receive fines, the fines will actually fall back on your license. So it is very imperative that you contact us as soon as you separate from that facility so we can have you removed. Once you are removed, you will receive a confirmation letter stating that you have been removed from that facility. We will also notify the facility that they are operating without an administrator or director of nursing. When you guys submit ODH Form 953, it is very imperative that you complete the entire document regarding the change of administrator or the director of nursing. If the departing administrator leaves, we will need that departing administrator's date of departure and your date of hire, or the date that you will be named the administrator, in order to proceed with processing. If the form is incomplete, we will notify the sender and let them know that there is a discrepancy with the form and that it needs to be complete and returned back to us so we can continue processing it. Again, if that do not happen and you do not respond, the facility could gain more penalties from from our compliance department, which is in long-term care. So we are encouraging you, if anything changes with that facility, to notify us, whether it's the owner, whether it's a new DON, whether it's a new medical director, whoever it is, please notify us so we can get this logged and processed and sent over to the appropriate parties. Um, when you're sending checks for your renewals for your initial license, um, it is advised that in the memo part of the check that you put the facility's name and the facility number. This way we can apply the payment to the right facility. If you're an administrator of multiple facilities, this is very important that you do so. Um, Failure to do so, it can delay the processing of your license renewals. We're trying to figure out which payment belongs to what facility and how much, or payments can be applied to the wrong facility based on a hunch. And we don't like to do that. We try to reach out to get more clarification, but too many times applications go unprocessed because we have a payment and we don't know how to apply the payment. Again, if you have any questions, again, you can email our HRDS email, our health facilities email. We're here to help. If we can't help, we can try to get you to someone that can help. Uh, on those assurance letters, it's important that you guys keep those just for your records and for ours. And I think that's just about it on our end. You can give us a call if you have any questions. Sometimes if you FedEx over information or additional information, again, you want to make sure that you address it to the planning specialist or to Ms. Espa Bowen that is requesting the information. She is our director and she is the one that oversees this entire process. So if Agnes, Mike, or Marjorie ask you to send something, if you're sending it via email, that's great. If you're going to send it through mail, make sure that you put it to their attention. That way we'll know how to process forward and log the information, and it'll get to them in a timely fashion. If you don't have any other questions, that's all I have regarding what we do. And I'm going to turn it back over to Marjorie.
Thank you, Naomi.
You're welcome.
I would like to ask again if anyone has any other questions. Okay, if not, as Naomi mentioned, please let us know if you are no longer with the facility and protect your professional administrator license. I would like to thank everyone for allowing us to present to you today, and we look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you very much. And that
Thank you.
concludes